Good morning and Happy New Year. I hope 2021 will be a bit better than last year. I'm going to be doing two hearts actually, one big, one small today in enamel and copper. Now this one here, I eat a lot of turmeric, that's why my fingernails are always yellow from cutting turmeric root. Anyway, this is a little heart. I've stuck on, these are just Illustrator files that are printed, and I just drew it, traced it in Illustrator, just a really simple heart, and then I print them out and then I cut them out. So I've stuck this drawing onto this piece of copper. It's 1.2 millimeters, and then I'm going to now cut it out and then enamel it. Okay, I've cut out my piece, here it is, and I'm just gonna, what I'm gonna do is, you can see there I left a spot where I'm gonna actually drill a little hole in there. Whoops. And what I'm gonna do is just take this piece of paper off. I need to give the edges a bit of a sanding because they're a bit rough. Smooth it all out a bit. So what I'm gonna do is just mark with a pencil a little where I'm gonna hammer. I think you can probably just about see that. And I'm going to hammer a dent just so that my drill bit doesn't slip. That should be good enough. This is just a piece of wood, and I'm going to drill a hole. And the beeswax is just to lubricate the tip of the drill bit. I've been using this drill bit for ages, so it's probably a little bit blunt. It just means it will go through a bit more easily, and it won't blunt the bit even more. Now that I've done the cutting and filing and all that, drilling, I'm going to dome this heart. This is the big heart. I've just noticed that it's a little bit rough here. That should be okay. So I'm going to dome it on my doming block, and I'm going to use the big one. It's better, I know that people sometimes think, but isn't that a bit large for that size heart? And yes is the answer, it is, but if you use something smaller, even something like that, okay, in comparison to that one, it can give it dents. And so what I usually do, it just looks like there's a little dent, and I don't really like that. So I usually use a really big one just to get a nice domed shape, nice smooth shape. And then I might go back and use something like this, or even these if I'm trying to, go around the edges or something like that. But with this one, it's just a really simple shape, and I'm just going to go for the big one. And I'm just trying to move, and I just move this around a bit. And the more you hammer something, the harder it gets. Which means it's harder to hammer. So the more I'm hammering this piece of copper, the harder I have to hit this hammer to dome it. It's called work hardening. And if you were doing something really intricate, you would heat this up. You'd anneal it till it goes bright orange, cool it down, you just quench it. This is rolling all over the place. And then you go back and you continue working on it until it's work hardened again. Then you go anneal it again, then you come back. So it's a matter of, like, people who do really intricate repoussé work do that. So there we go. Now that's way too domed for our needs. So what I'm going to do is I usually just tap it down. We don't want it sticking up that much. I usually just hammer it like this to get it into a bit of a nicer shape, and so that it's not scratching somebody's chest. Careful you don't hammer your fingers. I've done that many times because I'm not as careful as I should be. Okay, I think that's okay. And yeah, I think that's fine. So now I'm going to do my little heart, and I'm going to use These all have they're different depths, different sizes. As you can see, that's the one I use most because it's wrecked looking. For this one, I think I'll use this shape. And I want, the woman who ordered these, I think is probably going to wear them, I need to dome that a bit more, together. So I want them to be going in the same direction. So I want to dome them in the same direction. And this one I will use something a little bit smaller, even though that's big, it's quite big. I'll use it. And again, I'm going to make it really domed and then come back to it, tap it down a bit so it's not too much. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to just work on these a little bit more and then we'll get on with their enameling. That's the next. I'm going to do the backs of these now. I'm going to use black to do the counter enamel on the backs. So this is liquid black. I'm going to use just an old paintbrush to apply it. Let me just get that off. So this isn't painting enamel, this black I'm using, it's actually liquid enamel. So rather than painting it, you sort of push it around. Could be a little bit watery, but I think it's fine. And what I'll do is check it, you know, as I'm using my red. I know these hearts are going to be red, to make sure none of it is coming off, burning off. Because we can always apply a bit more. Okay. And it needs to be dried before it goes into the kiln, otherwise it will just sort of splatter around. So there we go. I'm going to put them sitting on some steel mesh on top of the kiln until they're dry, and then I'm going to turn them over and use our lovely red enamel. Okay, here we have our hearts. There's the big one. So they're dry, and as you can see, it doesn't drop off the back. It's nicely sort of adhered to it. So we're going to do the fronts now, and we're going to use this beautiful signal red that I get from Milton Bridge. It's a really nice red. I'm going to use an 80 mesh sifter. I usually use 80 mesh sifters for the base coat. It puts on a good amount without putting on too much. A lot of people use 40 mesh or 60 mesh. The lower the number, the bigger the holes in the mesh. But I find that just a bit too much goes on, and when too much goes on, it can pull back from the edges and ball up. So I just stick with 80 mesh. Pour that in. And it's best to hold your sifter at the very end. That way you get quite a lot of leverage. And try and do as even a coat as possible. On both. And you'll notice these have, this one has a bottle cap, and this one has a little piece of Lego, which is holding the piece up off the paper, so I can lift it. So now what I'm going to do is lift these. I'm actually quickly going to. I'm going to just brush. I like to have this thing with no enamel on it. This little sort of jump ring thing. I'm going to brush that off. And I'm going to put them on. Okay, let me just push this away. And put them on this. I'm going to put the big one on the big one. That's fine. The little one on the little one. And a bit more fiddly. And the bigger one is going to be going towards the back of the kiln. The back of the kiln is slightly hotter than the front. But because this is bigger, it's better to have it at the back and this one at the front. Right, so now we'll bring them over to the kiln. Okay, here are my hearts. They look crazy because they're completely black. Reds and oranges go really, really black when they're hot, and then the color will come up. Now they've been out of the kiln for about 15 seconds, so I can lift them off. And have a look at the back. I need a little bit more on the back of that one, I think. Finally, I've actually just put them in a little bit of water to cool them down. So that's the first layer, which is very kind of bubbly and a bit scruffy looking, but that's fine. That's the way red operates. It's what's often referred to as a rogue color because it burns off really easily. And there's burned off much more in the little one. So what I'm going to do now is wait for them to cool down a little bit more. I'm going to give the edges a rub to get all the loose oxides off, and then I'm going to do the second red layer. Okay, I just got another light because it was a bit dark in here, hence the shine on these. Okay, now we're going to go for coat number 2. I need it fairly thickish because I want it to be a really nice glossy looking red. And usually when I'm using red I like to leave black bits burning through, but for this particular pendant it needs to be very red all over. Okay, I think that's going to be alright. Zoom in here so you can see a bit better. So that's what we have. And when you're cleaning up, be careful to get rid of your little piece of paper and all that without flapping the enamel all over the place. So you just pour it back in into your jar. Gently rub that closed. Now closed, you got your next one, because this also has stuff on it. It also has enamel on it. And then you put it into the rubbish. Here we have our lovely hearts so far. And they're nice and shiny and smooth. The backs are looking pretty good. And now we just need to finish them off. One more firing. Do you want to come in? Do you want to come in? Or are you going to stay outside? Do you want to come in? Right, here's our hearts, and here is our lovely orange liquid enamel. It's pretty thick actually, this. It doesn't even drip off. We want it to be quite nice and thick. We want a nice big, I'll do the little one first actually. We want a nice big blob, healthy blob on each one. We're just doing it on the sides, and it's just to give it a little bit of je ne sais quoi. We'll do the same on this one, a bit bigger. And the blobs can be a bit bigger. I'm trying to keep them round without getting my knickers in too much of a twist about it, because you want it to be, you don't want to look like it came out of a factory. So round but not too round. Okay. There we go. Now, they have to dry before I put them in the kiln. And also, let me see if I can pick this up without spoiling it. Also, it's quite thick. It's much thicker than the other enamel. So it will need to be fired a little bit longer than we've been firing these, which can cause some of the red to go a little bit black, but I think we have enough on that shouldn't happen. So here these are sitting up on top of the kiln on their trivets and mesh. Probably take about, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll be able to fire them. Okay, here are our hearts. Black of heart. And you can see those orange blobs coming up. I think they look quite nice. Anyway, we'll have to see how it turns out. Once it's cool, it'll be nice and bright and red again. Okay, great. Okay, here are my hearts. I'm really, really happy with those. I think they came out really, really nice. Now I need to put them onto their chains and send them to their new owner. Hopefully she'll be happy. And here we have our hearts finished and on their chains. So here's the little one. It's a copper chain. And I did the chain lengths slightly different sizes so they won't be sitting right on top of each other. This one here, I added a much bigger piece of chain at the end so that it can be adjusted so you can have it much longer. And I put a little lovely orange glass bead. So there they are, the two hearts. And they'll be winging their way to somewhere in Dublin.